As you know, that EGROW Foundation, set up in October 2018, has been set up with the aim and purpose of research-based policy advice. The board of EGROW and Dr. Ashok Vishendas, who's part of the founding directors, is in the audience. Dr. Ratan Chand, who is the other founding director, is now chairing the validatory session, which we are running on NBFCs at India International Center at Lodi Road. And our board consists of people like us trying to give back to the society, basically trying to enrich the policy advisory for the government. Dr. Arvind Virmani was our chairman, and he was later on taken by Niti Aayog as a member. Suman Berry was also the advisor to EGROW, and he was taken over as the VC of Niti Aayog. We have been losing and getting people, of course. Surjit Bhalla was our advisor. He went to the IMF as the executive director and came back. Professor Ashima Goel is our advisor. She was the member of the RBI's monetary policy. That is what the board is all about. The think tank has been working in a focused way on research-based issues. During COVID, we seem to have played a very important role with working papers. Under G20 presidency, we have contributed 21 webinars. As we are speaking today, we have done about 280 webinars so far. So you can imagine 280 webinars, 90 minutes each, on an average 3 speakers per webinar. You can imagine the think tank is trying to contribute significantly into policymaking space. We have also had a blend of Indian speakers and foreign speakers, almost 50-50. 5 Nobel laureates have come and already spoken at EGROW Foundation. Major issues that EGROW Foundation works is monetary and fiscal issues, agriculture issues, social issues like poverty and unemployment, international economics, and issues like defense and also security. Last week, we had a session on Pahalgam and Viksit Bharat. The Viksit Bharat story of 2047, EGROW has a little role in it and very proud about that fact. About 4 years ago, just as COVID was setting in, the Niti Aayog asked us to do a study on India at 2047. About 15 of the best professors in the country helped us write that report. It is on the website of Niti, and it is later, or maybe little later, that the Prime Minister constituted a group of secretaries. They also worked at India 2047. So lots of work had gone into India 2047 before I think the Prime Minister brought it into public domain in his talk. Therefore, it's a very rigorous work that the Prime Minister depended upon before talking about it in public domain. And I think that's where the credit to the Prime Minister goes. Otherwise, people could have simply said, in this uncertain world, it's difficult to talk about tomorrow, and you're planning 25 years ahead. Of course, climate, we have been seeing studies are being done of what climate would be in 2030, in 2045, in 2070. But for economic planning for a country, I think we are very fortunate that we have the political back, the economists, the bureaucrats, the policymakers, everybody has a task worked out for them when the political bosses say that they are looking for this target in the next 20-25 years. In that sense, I think we are a very lucky set of people. Can we do it? Now, that is the most important question. I must share, challenges come all the time. When Korea embarked in 1962 to become a developed Korea, otherwise Korea was as bad as us. And by 1985, about 23 years, they scored 8% growth without break, despite economic challenges in their own country, in their neighborhood. They didn't have a very friendly neighbor either, nor global challenges like dollar disconnecting from gold, oil price shocks of 73 and 78, 79, they maintained 8% growth. China is another great glittering example. 1978, they were worse than us. And then they launched their reforms, and then no looking back. Now they may be 4% or 5% growth, but their per capita income is $15,000. Ours is $2,500. They scored a 10% growth without break for nearly 25 years. So Viksit Bharat is a great, great innovative, I think, driving force for our country, and we all need to contribute in it. That is why when this book came out on Viksit Bharat and civil servants have contributed to it, we were very thrilled. And with that background that EGROW had, I was that for a long time keen, and I was in touch with Mr. Amarjeet Sinha if he could do this study, if he could do this webinar for us. We are very lucky. Finally, we have that day today when we are going to listen to all of them. To chair this important session, we have Dr. Jugal Mohapatra, whom I have known for nearly 10 years now. I'm very impressed with his knowledge and his administrative base, and therefore we requested him to kindly come and chair the session today. He has contributed a chapter in the book, but then he's been a civil servant with lots of policy orientation in his career. As a formal introduction, he's a postgraduate in economics from D School. He also has a master's degree in economics from Boston University. He's a career Indian Administrative Officer of 1979 cadre. He has held many senior level positions in the state government and at the center. He was also the Chief Secretary to Odisha government. In the central government, he has served in different departments, but he was the joint secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development, and then he was also in the Department of Fertilizers and Rural Development, of course. Post-retirement, he has pursued his research and got his doctorate. Today, the first speaker for the day is Mr. Amarjeet Sinha. He is a senior fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress with over 40 years of experience in governance. He is the 1983 batch IAS officer. He has also worked as Secretary Rural Development Government of India and has served as advisor to the Prime Minister and member Public Enterprises Selection Board, again seeped in public policy. Our third speaker, the second speaker and third speaker today is Professor Anil Suraj. He is a dear friend of mine, a professor at IIM Bangalore, and I used to depend a lot on him. Just across my office was his office. He has a PhD in law, professor of practice in the public policy area at IIM Bangalore. He has designed and teaches a doctoral course on public administration and law since 2008. In the years 2010 to 2012, Suraj has undertaken research work and presented reports on working of 74th Amendment, participatory governance, and urban regulatory institutions as part of the Center for Excellence on Urban Governance at IIM. And he also works on various themes at the intersection of law, policy, and governance, and specializes in the areas of government, business relations, and citizen-centric policies. With this extremely brief introduction of the panelist and the chair today, I hand over the session to you, sir, to take the proceedings further. Dr. Mohapatra, please.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. First of all, let me, from the core of my heart, thank you for inviting me to chair this session. And also full compliments to EGROW Foundation for being extremely, hyperactive, I would say, in conducting its seminars. I have attended some, and it's a real pleasure that you have got many star speakers, including Nobel laureates. Recently, we had one of the most celebrated professors, one of the authors of Why Nations Fail, talk to us. And today, particularly, I'm delighted that one of my very close friends also been one of the speakers. I am, of course, one of his unworthy predecessors in rural development. but he's certainly my worthy successor. Viksit Bharat, there are two ways. One, of course, is discussion of the book, if you like, but more the theme is very general, and I think it needs to be discussed at length. How would the economic and social landscape of the country look like 22 years hence from now in 2047 when India attains the independent India at the age of 100 is something that is a visionary exercise. And two ways to look at it. One can look at it very narrowly in terms of growth rate, attaining a certain threshold level of per capita income as to become a high income country. But one can also visualize it very more broadly in terms of human development, sustainable human development and social development. So and of course, one can look at challenges, what kind of challenges that may emerge, what can we learn from other countries who have really escaped from the middle income trap. So lots of issues, everything to be discussed. And let me first, without rather first, Amarjeet, as Dr. Singh mentioned, is one of the finest, professionals in the field. He blends great academic vigor in his practical practitioner also. He is one of the most prolific, columnists in the field of rural development and social development. Possibly, he has worked in education, health, and rural development, and he is still extremely active in teaching. So let me request you, Amarjeet, to share your perspective for about 20 minutes. Is that, or 25 minutes? Is that okay, Dr. Singh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Amarjeet.
Yes. Respected Jugal Mohapatra, sir, Charan Singh, sir, Professor Anil, Suraj, and all those who've joined the webinar. At the outset, it's a privilege to have Mohapatra, sir, as the chair of a session. One has had the opportunity to learn from him continuously with regard to public policies, with regard to analysis, with regard to a whole lot of what works and what does not. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Professor Charan Singh. Viksit Bharat is a theme around which in the country we have continuous deliberations and discussions at various fora. Different perspectives, as Sir just mentioned. The economists talk about the rate of growth that is needed to be able to achieve what is set out. The social development professionals look at what is it that needs to be done to be able to achieve it. If one looks at the volume on Viksit Bharat, which I went through again before the webinar, it has a range of papers which capture what happened in agriculture, what happened in decentralization, what happened on rural development, what happened on social welfare, on women's empowerment. While on the one hand, it captures very well what is it that has been achieved since 47, what is it where governance worked, what is it where the assessment of the authors who've contributed to this volume makes a broad generalization of where we are and where we are headed. But when one moves a little deeper into it, you also see the presence of the Constitution of India in every chapter in this particular volume. In some manner, every chapter derives its energy from some of the provisions of the Constitution of India, how the fundamental rights, the directive principles, the center-state relationships, all of them in their own way have shaped the manner in which we have moved. How one person, one vote, what consequences political democracy had for economic and social democracy. And as comes out very clearly, it's always a case of the glass half full. While in many sectors, we have made progress which makes us compare ourselves with the best in the world, there are many other sectors where we could have done better. And in this particular webinar, one way of positioning this entire volume is to see where we have reached and where we need to go. If I were to focus on some of the sectors that I am more familiar with, the social development sector in particular, one would say that yes, on multidimensional poverty, on assessments of poverty, on a range of assessments around human development, health indicators, when we compare with where we were in 1947, we seem to have come a long way. But when we move eastwards and look at some of our neighbors in the high performing Asian economies, then we feel that perhaps we could have done better. Whether it is to do with education, whether it is to do with learning outcomes, whether it is to do with health indicators, while we have achieved a lot remains to be achieved in the years to come. And it is in this context that Viksit Bharat is also an opportunity to revisit and look at the evidence very carefully. After all, what are these reforms which are likely to take us where we want to be? In doing so, when I was broadly looking at the various challenges that we face, few of them stand out as most prominent. If I were to look at some of the recent data which has been published and try and connect all the data, then what emerges is that devolution, development, and democracy goes together. And we find it in a range. Professor Anil Suraj's paper has also looked at some of those aspects. But clearly, the Reserve Bank of India in 2023, Chapter 9 in its report called The State of Panchayati Raj in India, it took up a study to look at the devolution index of the states as firmed up by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj in 2016, which has now been updated in 2024, and then to look at the indicators of health, sanitation, and other sectors. And that paper concluded that states which devolved more were also the states where health and sanitation indicators were better. The second finding, that those states which did well on devolution, which did well on human development, are also the provinces where multidimensional poverty is lower. The fourth finding, that those states which decentralized, those states which had better health and sanitation indicators, those states which had lower multidimensional poverty, are also the states where per capita consumption expenditure, the monthly per capita consumption expenditure, as per the reports released in 2022-23, they had higher monthly per capita consumption expenditures as well. States like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh, Goa, they figure in this bracket. The fifth point, which again the work is still going on. In fact, I've been trying to look at the private sector's decisions on investments. If one does some analysis, though of course it is still not possible to say it with finality, but some of the data is broadly indicating that there are clusters which get a lot of those investments, which create better jobs. Why are those clusters where they are? Why is it in and around Bangalore, in and around Hyderabad, in and around Delhi, in Tamil Nadu, in Maharashtra? So clearly, human capital seems to play a role. Wherever human capital is available, it is much easier for manufacturing to take off much faster. So I think a clear lesson for Viksit Bharat in the further decades towards 2047, how do we ensure human capital of a certain quality and its linkages with employment, that it can actually lead not only to higher productivity, but also to higher incomes and wages of dignity. Because clearly, if one looks at the Periodic Labor Force Survey 2022 data, what comes out is the fact that if you earn, in fact, 2019-20 data, where if you earn 25,000 rupees a month, which is 3 lakhs a year, as per the analysis provided in the State of Inequality report of Niti Aayog, you figure in the top 10% of wage earners. If that is the case, it means that a lot of the jobs that we have created are 17,000, 18,000, 20,000, 15,000 jobs. Clearly, these help us to come out of chronic poverty, but I am not sure it gives us a quality of life which is good enough to be called a life of full dignity. If that is the case, this is one of the challenges that we need to address, and human capital acquires an important role. The other bit which will become important as we move forward, whether every developed country has had a higher incidence of urbanization. While a lot of efforts have happened over the last 20 years, from the urban renewal mission to the smart city missions, a whole lot of other programs, but we still have a long way to go in creating the urban mission for rural areas with urban-like features. There is clearly, if we wish to grow faster, we will have a larger population in the non-farm economic activity who would need geographical, spatial, urban spaces, rural areas developing into urban spaces, the census towns growing larger, existing cities becoming bigger, the class 2, class 3 level cities growing further. All these aspects are urban mission contributing to urban-like infrastructure in rural areas with non-farm employment. So if one looks at again the journey of the future, human development by all means needs the priority. And the lesson there is that devolution probably contributes to better outcomes in the systems of human development. The interconnectedness of education, health, skills, livelihood, employment, nutrition, it becomes very necessary that convergence begins from below. So we need devolution, we need human development, we need better quality of lives for workmen who come to cities. We need a fourth one, a women-led development, because what is coming out very clearly, especially in the context of women's collectives under the National Rural Livelihood Mission, which has demonstrated about 100 million women are part of the National Rural Livelihood Mission, up from about 25 million in 2013-14 to about 100 million now. Of these, about 55 million are already credit linked. Add to that the credit access under Mudra and other credit arrangements at the bottom end. So clearly in the last 15 years, we have seen an expansion of access to credit by those at the margins. And some of this, when we are talking about rural female labor force participation rate going up, besides looking at other factors, it is not an indicator of well-being necessarily, but it is indicating that women, a lot of their work in agriculture, for example, women, a lot of their work with single person or two person enterprises may not be making enough money, but some beginning seems to have been made. And as the PLFS records employment, requires labor force participation rates in a certain manner, we do find that access to retail lending in rural areas have led to creation of 1% and 2% enterprises on a larger scale. This has been reported in the PLFS as well. The other thing which has been reported is agricultural wage employment going up in the recent years. So here again, part of the explanation lies in the fact that women's collectives in many instances have borrowed monies, they have taken credit to work in agriculture. While land ownership with women may be less, but in terms of actual cultivation, 60 to 70% of cultivation in India is happening through women. And there too, as in this volume, Siraj Hussain sir's paper has argued, the non-agricultural animal husbandry, the dairy sector, the poultry sector, the horticulture sector, lot of the transformations even in rain-fed areas, which has been happening over these years, it does bring out the fact that some change is happening. This is also the period, especially when the debate about the rural labor force participation rate is going on. We have to also bear in mind that in the COVID years, the overall allocation of funds for programs like the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, if you look at year 2021, the allocations went up to 1,11,000 crores, almost double of the normal. And it remained at about that level of 97, 98,000 crores for a couple of years. I'm mentioning these figures because we also have found that between 2017-18 and 2023-24, women's participation, women's share of the wage work in MGNREGS has gone up from 52 to 58, 59%, a 5 to 6% increase. So overall, in terms of the work availability, because the allocations went up for Narega, more work was generated, almost 350 crore person days in a year. The share of the women wage earners was higher. And third, easy access to credit and expansion of the women's self-help groups. All this together leads to a situation where women in rural areas have made use of credit to start small enterprises or have worked as under wage employment under MGNREGS. These may well be among other factors which have contributed to the rising trend in the rural labor force participation rate, the female labor force participation rate. So clearly, these are issues of women-led development, while we need to move on a higher order. And again, studies on women's collectives have brought out the fact that a lot of the gains in incomes, Anjani Kocher's study from Stanford, the study by the Institute of Rural Management, Anand, both of which recorded about 22% increase in incomes of those households, had also concluded it takes 6 to 8 years for a women's collective to mature. And that being the case, the process itself is very intensive. But there also a point comes out for higher order lending or for higher order incomes or higher order enterprises, human capital is the essence. And clearly, when we look at the high performing Asian countries, while they had the export led manufacturing growth and a proactive state, they also had human capital and secondary completion on a much larger scale. I'm currently engaged in a study on a public report on secondary education, where we are looking at the 14 to 21 age group, looking at what their human capital aspirations are and what is it that the system is offering. Well, the good news is that participation and enrollments have gone up, but we still have a very long way to go. For example, a very basic thing like the provision of, we all talk about science and the STEM education and the role that it can play in transformation of lives and livelihoods. But when we do a across state analysis, it is quite paradoxical that while some states like Tamil Nadu, like Andhra Pradesh, like Telangana, 60 to 70% of the students in class 12 have got science as an option. But when you move to some other states in northern India, as also in eastern India in particular, West Bengal, for example, among other states, Jharkhand, Bihar, the percentage of access to science education is much lower. And we are calling it access to science education because we find that in many of these states, a private unaided school has more than 58% children opting for a science stream, which means that in the government system, adequate number of science teaching has not been made available. Therefore, many of them are. So the important point to bear in mind for Viksit Bharat 2047 is that the demographic dividend that we are looking for, in large measure, it will come from poorer regions of the country. It will come from regions which still have a high rates of fertility. It will come from regions which have high population. If that is the case, those regions require a far greater thrust on human capital, the education employment, the education skill, the education productivity linkages, which are likely to take us in that orbit of 10% growth annually. I'll stop here. The time, I think I have exceeded my time, so I'll just stop here, sir. Thank you very much, sir. You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Thank you, Amarjeet, for a very incisive and very concise talk. Shall come back to many of your issues, possibly during your question session. Now I will request Suraj, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, sir. And I thank Shri Amarjeet Sinha for having laid out the issues in a appropriate manner. I think he has identified on the aspect of Viksit Bharat what would be the kind of parameters on which we need to work on. I'll just take about 5 minutes or so to lay out what was the chapter that I had contributed to the book, and as rightly mentioned, I think the starting foundation for any of this discussion is the Constitution. And we have had a constitution that was quite ahead of its times 75 more years ago as well, and continues to lay down blueprint for be it development, be it equality, equity, and so many of the other very paramount concerns that we all need to be involved with. One of the biggest strengths and perhaps also the factors that needs to guide our policies is plurality. Right? When we talk about India, I don't think we can talk about any aspect of from many angles. We are plural in every sense of the term, and to that extent, I think that's also reflected in each of the chapters that come out in the book as well. And even when we talk about local governance, be it through panchayats, be it through municipal governments, I don't think we can, while we may specify many things uniformly in terms of design, structure, frameworks, but I think the real strength of our democracy lies in the fact that the municipal corporation in one part of the country functions in very different ways than that of the other, and be it the traditional parts like in the when we talk about the Kolkata municipal planning committee as opposed to, let's say, something in Bangalore, are entirely very different when it comes to the manner in which they consult with people, the manner in which there are issues being taken up. So I think devolution as well as decentralization would have its own local character and facet, which I think which is good, which is actually a good thing, and unlike in the case of Western models of governance, to be having to make it too standardized is not perhaps the right path, and that's one of the points that I think we bring out in the book as well. Just to give an aspect, I think it's very clear the Constitution did lay down, if you look at the list of legislative subject items in the Schedule 7 of the Constitution, it's very clear, it's very union-centric, if I may use the term. It's a lot of that powers lie with the parliament and with the state as well to some extent. Concurrent list is grown. It's a lot of very important, like labor and education, were subjects that were shifted from the state to the concurrent. I would like to believe that instead of calling it concurrent, perhaps it is more to appropriate to say that it should be a comprehensive flow of thinking and implementation. So you formulate at the parliament level, but leave the implementation to the local. And I think that's where we are perhaps hinting to go towards it in terms of labor or education. Maybe health will also move in that direction very soon. And I think that's where the local forums like the municipal corporations or even the ward committees or today I think we are seeing at least in some of the cities like Bangalore, the resident welfare associations is a very good example of how technology and community can come together in multiple ways and on issues which hitherto were not necessarily given a lot of importance. On the other hand, I think I have not much to add to what was mentioned about devolution index by Sinha Saab. I think that's a very good aspect that we are seeing that clear connect between devolution and actual development, which I think is going to become even more stronger as we go along. But surely, I think private investments, PPPs, efficiency of what we already have. In fact, I would say, the kind of startups that we are able to, when we are in Bangalore, we see many people saying we have technology and ideas, but we want to put them out into the kind of development laboratory. And over there, I think we are not being able to connect the innovative potential as well as the social problem solving kind of an approach. And I think that's where the governments, departments and many different parastatal agencies should be able to work and bring together our own potential to innovate and solve a lot of our own problems. And I think we need to do a lot more on that. And that's where we believe private investment is not only through bringing in finance or leveraging credit, but also in terms of ideas and their ability to contribute to technological, not just technological, but even in terms of their approaches to the public and social concerns. And I'm sure that is the other role that we will be playing. In the book, in the chapter, I do refer to something that took place long back in a quaint town of Brazil with regard to budgeting. Right, the participatory budgeting, and I think given to technological abilities and given the way we have taken to social media and WhatsApp and so many of these platforms, I think that should be an absolutely ready-made solution or at least a platform to bring together people when it comes to a lot of these public goods, public concerns, community way of discussing, and may even be tomorrow implementing things. And we know that there are governments today which are providing mobile-based government services. And I do know for a fact that the Andhra Pradesh has kind of taken on, I think, more than 200, very soon going to be more than 300. Through purely on the platform of WhatsApp itself. So I think that would be the future, and not just 2047 for sure. It would be much earlier than that, and I think we would be building towards that. And that is where we need to work on when it comes to be it using technology or be it also, I think, if I may, one other point that was touched upon, and maybe institutionally, we need to prepare for better, for lack of a better term, I'll say better agencies, but more importantly, I would say regulatory bodies, specific sectoral entities, which are not statal alone. In fact, we must invest a lot more in non-state capacity building when it comes to, and not necessarily NGOs. NGOs, of course, play a role, but when it comes to institutions which are representative of industry, of communities, of labor, of consumers, of citizens. So I think we need to invest into institutions which will play that role and be able to guide a lot of our formulation as well as implementation, and the loop of having to make sure that we keep updating and growing. And today's technology has enabled that. When we say big data analysis, collection of data, the dashboards, I don't think they will have any kind of an impact unless we have people reading and being able to implement these things on a ongoing format. And that's also something that we have mentioned in the book, that regulatory bodies and bodies which are more representative of multiple stakeholders need to be established and duly empowered for their governance and public administration in the to come, but surely aiming towards Bharat of 2047. Right? So I'll maybe stop here, and if there are any further points and this thing, we'll be happy to contribute.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Suraj. So shall we throw the platform open to questions now, Dr. Singh?
Oh, I myself have a question for both of them, but let's open it, and Dr. Vishandas will also probably have a question. My question to both of you is influenced by what I am seeing since morning. My worry is that urbanization is going to take place the way you have mentioned. Both of you have brought the rural story in. And now urbanization is going to take place, and under Viksit Bharat, how will urbanization contribute significantly into air pollution and through construction activities and through call it unauthorized colonies, development of slums? How are we going to handle this under Viksit Bharat? And this could be highly polluting. This could have side effects of lungs and all those diseases. It could have problems with climate, and then the Prime Minister's call of zero emission. How are we going to marry all this? When it came to our stage of development, suddenly the whole world has become aware of climate issues. Now, how do you think we'll navigate through this, and what all can we do? Thank you.
Professor Suraj, would you like to respond?
Yes, I think I don't think any of us can deny that we are rapidly urbanizing. I think in the last 10 years, since 20 itself, we have increased the rate of, the number of percentage of people living in urban areas has gone up by more than 7%. So that's surely a challenge. Just thinking about the metric tons of garbage that is generated by Bangalore city alone on a daily 8,000 metric tons of garbage that is being generated on a daily basis. And this is, we don't know how much of it can be treated, how much of it can be reused, and all of that is of a separate issue. So I think the magnitude of the challenge, as you rightly pointed out, Professor Singh, is absolutely high. But I think in addition to all the other ways in we are responding, we need to realize that governance itself can be a wonderful response to some of these things. The manner in which we are governing, the manner in which we are responding as a government, right? Government itself cannot be, so for sure we cannot have a urban development department alone bearing this burden of having to respond to many of this. And I think in terms of even, how do we treat water, redistribute it and use it? That itself is a great example of where private community residents can come together and do a great job of it. The sooner we are able to put in place scaling mechanisms of these constituents coming together, the better it would be. And there is no other one magic wand solution for sure. When it comes to many of this, technology also is only possible only if there is community intervention. Waste to electricity has not been possible unless wherever community has been able to join hands. And I think that's the solution. Technology is a great enabler, but not without community and with some nudge from the government side. I think that would be an excellent way of countering all of this. But surely, yes, the magnitude of urbanization is a big crisis facing us all over the country.
I can see Mr. Mahendra Reddy had raised his hand. Would you kindly, Mr. Reddy? You're mute.
May I? Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Professor Vishwandas.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very captivating exposition by the panelists and the chairman's initial comments. Very encouraging, and so there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm just wondering, in 2047, when we will become developed country, now, as of now, it's about 13,500 per capita US dollar is one of the conditions, but there is no upper limit. So I want your view where we will fit into. Of course, we'll just cross the threshold, or it will be the middle or at the top. That is one, because I have read one interesting book of Henry Kissinger. He writes that economic strength is the currency of power. So we have seen recently how important that is. And second, which is also associated with that, no part of the country should remain Viksit, underdeveloped. So that also means there has to be devolution of the functions, because I heard earlier Amarjeet Sinha, he keeps on talking of funds, function and functionality. Now, when functions, the panchayats are not empowered with the function because there is no clarity. And in Article 243G, it says the states may, they don't say it should, do the certain legislative measures so that they can pass those 29 functions to the panchayat. Not many states have done that. So what is view, Amarjeet, and both of you have done a lot of work in the rural development. I will be interested to know your views on this. Thank you very much.
Either of the panelists can respond to this question. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir,
It is Anji. Yes, can I speak, sir? Professor Charan Singh, can I speak? Am I
Hello.
audible? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yeah, this is Mahendra Reddy, sir. I think we can.
Okay, sir.
Yes,
May I
yes.
speak?
I am Professor Mahendra Reddy from Vice Chancellor, Hyderabad. I want to congratulate the speakers. I have two questions. Number one is, what are the three most important things which the distinguished panelists will decide on to achieve the Viksit Bharat? Is our demographic dividend is not indefinite. Very soon it's going to end. So what should be the strategy of the nation to develop our demographic dividend so that we realize the Viksit Bharat by 2047? Thank you. Once again, hearty congratulations to Mr. Charan Singh and all of you.
Thank you. There are two questions that came up. Mr. Vishwandas, where would, in terms of in the income in 2047, and the second question that Professor Mahendra Reddy just asked. So I request both of you to handle this question.
Shall I come in, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this. I think thank you for the questions which have been raised. While answering it, I'll just also like to add, while Professor Suraj has already covered the first question which was raised, clearly green growth cannot be on the back burner. So I think that is the first lesson that we've learned. And across the world, again, if I look at the evidence, green growth requires decentralized community action. In the absence of decentralized community action, all pure infrastructure measures in urban areas, they have a tendency that the utilization is not what was anticipated. Brick and mortar, yes, will help for sure. But the utilization of the structures that we create depends a lot on how local communities are mobilized. So I would say on the point of decentralization also, even in urban areas, we will have to, I think it's a question of fixing the highway before we drive on it. And I would like to explain this by saying in the urban areas, currently, direct elections end at the ward level. Ward is a very large unit. We cannot have community action at that level. People actually live in small little bastis, but a ward in the case of Mumbai Municipal Corporation would mean a population of 2 lakhs. In large corporations, it means a population of 40,000. So I think my one recommendation I wish to make is that in the urban areas, we must have a unit of under the ward at the basti level preferably, where we have elected leadership. The constitution does not come in the way. The article 243G is very clear on this. This can be done. This was suggested at the time of the urban renewal mission as well. And we realize that infrastructure for it to be efficiently used needs very strong community action. The second point, just as women's collectives have played the countervailing presence role in rural areas in most parts of the country, elected panchayat leaders being held accountable by women's collectives under the Rural Livelihood Mission, the PRI-SHG partnership, we need similar community formations in urban areas at the basti level, which can hold the elected leadership accountable for what needs to be done. The third point, if one were to zero in on just 3 factors, devolution, human development, and urban spaces will figure high. Urban spaces, again, revisioning urban spaces, revisioning human development, and looking at devolution from a perspective of the double-digit growth that we are seeking. Because clearly, if we don't fix the broken highway, any amount of trying to make that work doesn't happen. So the lessons which are coming from the evidence on the ground, it's not just a matter of small fixing here or there. It's a matter of accepting decentralized community action, collaborative governance as the way forward. If we do that, the likelihood is that the double-digit economic growth that we want looking at, we can move in that direction with higher skills and higher employability than at present. If that is the case, clearly the incomes and its rise as we wish to visualize will not happen at the pace that is needed to achieve where we want to be unless we sort out the human capital challenge. And as been rightly said, the danger of becoming old before we become rich will always be there, which means a certain sense of urgency has to inform the human capital thrust. A lot of the basic infrastructure is in place. Last mile is what will matter. The last mile hand holding, the last mile support, the last mile human resources. If we are able to address that efficiently and effectively, because again, if one looks at India, one of the areas of challenges for India has been what I would refer to as a public goods sector. India as a nation has not done well in public goods, primary education, primary health, clean urban spaces, legal matters, court matters, tendencies. So if India has to become the Viksit Bharat. It has to do much more on crafting credible public systems which give you better outcomes in public good sectors. Thank you.
Hello. Sir, may I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is Professor Satyabhan Yadav, Alwar, Rajasthan. Principal Government Commerce College, Alwar, Rajasthan, sir.
Haji, please.
Sir,
Mr. Yadav.
yes, very much thanks to Sri Amarjeet, sir, for presenting a very nice deliberation on Viksit Bharat 2047. So, my question is very small, but with a very big challenge. That do you think that by 2047, zero poverty is a achievable goal? If you think yes, then what would be the strategy for achieving this goal? This is a very small and big nature question, sir.
Amarjeet, zero poverty by 2047?
Theoretically, it is possible, but to reach there, lot many changes as outlined above. If we don't address human capital, if you don't address employability, if we don't address higher productivity, if we don't address fixing the highway, or in terms of devolution, professionals at the cutting edge level, if we don't create higher order skilling and higher order technology use, there are challenges to where we would reach. So clearly, it is possible, but it will require an effort where human capital is prioritized, where devolution is prioritized, and where last mile outcomes becomes the focus in crafting credible public systems. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Some more
If I may
questions?
just add to what Mr. rightly pointed out, I think there is that slogan which sustainable development goals emphasize upon, and we have also kind of referred to, and which I think should go back to what Gandhiji said long time back: leave no one behind. Right? I think that's the aspect which we need to keep in mind, and much as we may improve our economic parameters, per capita income and all, but surely I think in terms of redistribution, equity, and being able to involve people right from the time of be it planning, identification of goals, and all of those priorities, policy priorities, and not just beneficiary. I think that's the approach which is going to make us truly a Viksit Bharat.
Thank you. I think we can take one or two questions more, if anybody has. In the chat box, a question relating to tribal development. Actually, that's a issue that has not been discussed because the question is the development as it is happening has created a number of problems in the tribal areas. So how do we, I mean, they are more vulnerable, they are more, in terms of development indicators, they are fair, not as good as the other sections of the society. So would you say something about the approach to tribal development, Professor Suraj?
There have been many legislations that have been brought about in the years, over the years, by Parliament in due course. We have also made efforts in different areas, zones, when it comes to making sure that we don't impose our structure of development on indigenous people, their culture, their rights. But in many ways, I think we have not been able to bring them into governance structures. We have not been able to bring their participation when it comes to even some of the forest rights and dwellers' rights and things like that. And that has while that has been a thing of the past, maybe we need to rededicate our efforts to look at how do we make sure that we involve them, right, to do it together, to be able to incorporate their aspirations as well, and our development in terms of provision of public goods, in terms of being able to reach out to them. I don't think our form of development by itself can be directly 100% transplanted and imposed upon them. That may not be the right manner, which I'm sure all of us would agree on that. But in terms of being able to bring them within governance structures is the big challenge. And I think there are many states working on that with priority.
Thank you, Professor Suraj. I think I don't see any other question in the chat box, nor any hand has been raised. So let me try and give my concluding remarks. Friends, we have had a very enlightened discussion on the theme of Viksit Bharat. Both the panelists have given their perspective, and the questions that followed have also brought out many other issues which are not discussed in the main discussion. Now, very narrowly, if we look at Viksit Bharat, in the last, from 2000 to 2019, India has roughly grown at the rate of 6.7% compound rate of growth. And if we need to achieve the so-called high income status by 2047, we need to grow at about 7.8% year on year for next 22 years, which is not an easy task, but given that many countries have grown at 8% for 2 decades, certainly it is doable, though the challenges are formidable. So purely in terms of the growth number that was raised, is that we need to grow at 7.8% over the next 22 years to become a high-income country by when India reaches 100 years. Now, quite clearly, growth will depend on your investment and productivity, purely from an economic perspective. And around 75% of investment, total investment that is made, comes from private sector. So we need to have a very much more vibrant private sector investment that would need to do the heavy lifting in the years to come if we really need to achieve. The second aspect is productivity, which is where I think public investment comes, plays a very large role, and very rightly both the panelists have stressed adequately enough that human development, education, health holds key to achieving very. So without that, nothing will happen. So and if we need also to sustain productivity, we need one aspect which has been discussed in the book, has not figured so much in the discussion. Research and development is another area which has to be emphasized enough in the next 22 years. This is one area India has not been doing as well as most of the other countries. Our investment on R&D, both by public and private sector, is much below what we should be doing. I think this is so technology development, process innovations. These are all important. So high levels of investment, high productivity level, high continuous research and development for innovations. These are extremely important. They have also emphasized that if India has to be Viksit, it cannot happen only in one part of India. It has to happen in all parts of India. So regional equity is extremely important. And Amarjeet very rightly said, much of the growth potential actually is there, has not been harvested in these are the low-hanging fruits in the so-called laggard states or aspirational states. Much of the growth will come, the greatest demographic dividend will come from that area. And research has also, and evidence has shown that redistributive fiscal policies have work done wonders actually. So catching up in terms of equality and in terms of social development is extremely important. So many issues. The other thing is two other issues I would like to flag. One, of course, the issue of governance in general. I think governance reforms is extremely important for the issues to talk, whether we talk about investment, whether we talk about research and development, whether we talk about productivity improvement. So governance and regulatory reforms is extremely important. And so very rightly in the last budget, the finance minister has announced a commission, deregulation commission. Lots of regulation is stifling growth. So these are areas where we need to do. And finally, I think one more issue I'll flag, and then I'll say, conclude my remarks. State capacity is a very, very challenging and a binding constraint. And I'm thankful to Dr. Charan Singh that he had invited Karthik Muralidharan here. He gave an excellent talk about how state capacity is one of the key challenges if we have to achieve the developed nation status. So all around, state capacity needs to be improved, and lots of very practical and pragmatic solutions are already available. So with this, I thank all the panelists. I thank all the participants. I thank the EGROW Foundation for having this organized discussion, and especially thankful to those who have made this possible. Thank you very much. Singh, can we conclude now?
Yes, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you for handling this session so very well on Viksit, and of course widening the scope beyond the book. And I think that has been really helpful for all of us to understand how a policymaker thinks and how and what all we need to really do about. I totally agree with the assessment which you have mentioned that we will have to do something in terms of human capital. Without human capital, probably it is not going to be possible. So I totally agree with you. And we have to, I like the points that you have made. I've of course listed them down. And these are very important, where we'll have to focus on various issues. And the key thing that has been mentioned, the decentralized community action, I think is really necessary. And what happens to redistributive fiscal policy, if it can help. And we have the Finance Commission sitting right now, and how they can help. And we have somebody who's an economist and accomplished economist. And therefore, my thinking is that he should be able to weave in something so that we are able to kickstart the journey towards Viksit Bharat in the next 22 years. So I really want to thank you on each of the issues that you have mentioned, the governance, the regulatory reforms. One issue that me and Amarjeet were discussing today morning was the women's participation, and emerges on the panel today all are men, and the questions have also generally come from men. But it seems the women are taking over, be it the self-help groups, be it Manrega, be it MFIs. And today, of course, in Nepal, I have seen the foreign minister is a woman, and the previous foreign minister was also a woman. So I think the role of female labor force participation, which is emerging, I think also needs to be acknowledged in Viksit Bharat. They will, I think, play a very prominent role. And therefore, if we can decentralize it, take the women along, I think the journey will become faster, quicker, and more steadier. So I really want to thank each one of you for bringing various issues on to the forum for discussion. The recording of this will be available, I'm sure, by tomorrow. I hope so, because we have had some technical glitch at our end today. So I hope it'll be released tomorrow, and if it is, I will share it with all of you. So next week, I'm going to see you again. The Friday webinar series continues. So I'll see you again. I'll send you a flyer and invite you for the same. I want to thank Dr. Mohapatra today for accepting our invite to chair. I want to thank Mr. Amarjeet Sinha to have agreed and shared his thoughts, and of course my dear friend Suraj, whom I treat like a younger brother and order him that he has to come, though he's every time so busy and traveling. I'm really thankful to you, Suraj. Finally, you could find time and be with us. I want to thank the participants as well for asking such important questions in person and in the chat box. We have been watching those questions in the chat box too. In nutshell, I want to thank each one of you to be here with us today. So thanks again. See you next week, and hoping that the recording will be available by tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.